That there is Ryan Malcolm, and we want to welcome him to join us in this captivating journey as we sit down with him. He's a multi-talented Canadian Idol winner. He has since blossomed into a thriving entrepreneur, restaurant owner, and real estate investor. Ryan's inspirational story you're about to hear has profound insights and will undoubtedly leave you motivated and empowered to embrace your life with purpose.
In this episode, we explore the notion of living life beyond traditional norms. Discover why waiting until retirement age to truly start living may not be the most fulfilling or wealth-building approach. Ryan shares eye-opening perspectives on how sacrificing some income or assets today can lead to enriching experiences and contribute to building your own version of life wealth.
Ryan's successes as an entrepreneur is no coincidence. We delve into the transformative power of an entrepreneurial mindset and attitude. Learn how this mindset enables you to cultivate and sustain valuable partnerships, driving both your professional and personal growth.
Welcome to the Invested Teacher Podcast with Kyle Pierce, Matt Bigley, and John Orr.
Get ready to be taught as we share our successes and failures encountered during our real-life lessons, learning how to build generational wealth from the ground up.
Welcome, invested students, to another episode of the Invested Teacher Podcast. Today, we are so excited to welcome our first guest of many who will be joining us in the future to chat about their invested student stories along the way. And we thought that Ryan was a great fit simply because he not only has that entrepreneurial spirit, but he has a really interesting story in how he's sort of began in the entertainment space, headed into that hospitality space with the restaurant, living abroad, and now landing himself firmly in the real estate world as a realtor.
So let's not waste any more time. Let's get you into that story and see what you can pull from his life journey to see how you can apply it to your journey as building your wealth. Let's go. Well, hey there, Ryan. Welcome to the Invested Teacher Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, guys. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Awesome.
Hey, Ryan, it's been
stuff.
awesome. Yeah, sorry there. Ryan, it's awesome to have you on the show here. I've heard a lot about you because it sounds like you might know John a little bit. So tell us
Just
a little bit about yourself and what's your story? What's your journey? How do you know John? And I guess, where are you now?
Yeah, so John and I, we literally grew up together. It's one of those old friendship tales you always hear about. We grew up across the street from each other, instantly became best friends. It's been a 40-year friendship, I think.
I think so. Yeah, it's got to be for sure.
Yeah, we're getting older there, but yeah, it's a testament to just staying in contact with high school, or not high school, but public school friends, and just it's been a long friendship, but we kind of know each other very well. I mean, you've seen me and I've seen you kind of change as you grow up, and you've got your careers and I've got mine, and it's interesting to watch.
Totally.
You know what? I gotta say, so like what I'm hearing, like I'm imagining listening to this podcast right now, and it's like, oh, like John just brought on his friend. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna listen. But actually, I think you've got a pretty interesting story. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
Let's maybe roll back and then kind of take us or kind of bring us to current times here, because I was intrigued by your story, and I think people listening are really going to find it interesting as well.
So yeah, I as John knows, I grew up singing with my father. We had family restaurants as I was growing up, and when I was 23, I think, oh my God, it was a while ago now, I actually auditioned 20 years ago. Yeah, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of it. So 20 years ago, I auditioned for Canadian Idol, which was a little startup. Yeah. And ended up winning the show. So yeah, the first Idol of Canada, I guess, if you want to call it that. But from there, it's been a wild, crazy 20 years of just
Hmm.
touring and changing my path career wise and everything. So
Well, yeah, like I know that puts you on this like trajectory, this pathway. Like you had taken that kind of that platform. You had gone and done a couple things. Like I know that you had a band that kind of spun off of that
yep,
success. Toured with those guys for a long while, and
yeah,
like your journey just kept going because like you moved to Costa Rica, you opened a
yep,
restaurant. Like you are an
yep,
entrepreneur at heart, and that's partly the reason
yeah.
we brought you on the
Mm.
show is because you've got this long, amazing history of like thinking about business, starting a business, running businesses, changing careers, and starting new businesses. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so give us
It's like
that
right
journey
up
as
our
well.
alley for sure, right?
Like give us like some insights of like business owners, and for the folks that are listening are pretty have that entrepreneurial spirit and are
hmm
looking for like advice in insight and like in inspiration. So
Yeah.
so I'm wondering, like, give us some insight of like what was it about Costa Rica that that part then turned into coming back to Ontario,
Sure.
becoming a realtor,
Yeah.
which area you settled in, and like what happened after that and the success of some of that.
Sure. So I will say, being a musician in Canada, you need to be adaptable. We constantly have jokes in the industry that you've got to be a chameleon because the industry is so um, it's difficult. Let's just put it that way. Canada is not the US, so you're not making the millions of dollars. So you have to be able to adapt. And so for me, being an entrepreneur and growing up the son of two entrepreneurs, I
Mm-hmm.
had that ability and drive. So when the career was kind of winding down in 2013, I ended up moving to Costa Rica with my wife. We started a restaurant down there. We had that for about 2 or 3 years. It was very successful. My wife's an incredible chef.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a learning experience for sure. Just being able to get out of our comfort zone and invest, not just in Canada, but in a foreign country was a huge
Hmm.
learning curve. There's a lot of different things obviously involved with that you don't necessarily have to do when you're investing in Canada. And so that was a really great learning experience. And as we were doing the Costa Rica stuff, I said, when we move back to Canada, I definitely want to have something that I can sort of quote unquote fall back on in case my modeling career doesn't take off. As a hair model.
Yeah, yeah. Don't take your hat off.
Yeah, I'm not going to take my hat off.
You and Kyle have
But
something in common.
yeah,
I started
he's
smirking, but I'm like, I didn't know if he's joking or
no,
not, or
you're
Yeah,
you're
no.
doing a lot better than me. You're doing a lot better than me. But yeah, so I started taking the courses and I just instantly fell in love with the idea of, listing and selling homes and getting into that market. And the more I do it, the more I learn, the more I love it. So fast forward, 5 or 6 years, and I've been selling real estate now for I guess about 7 years now. And I was in Godridge, which is north of London.
yeah.
And within the first few years, I was one of the top agents in the area. And I think part of that has to do with my musical background. I'm very comfortable with people. Um, and it's a people business. Yeah, there's houses you
Hmm.
got to sell, but at the end of the day,
Hmm.
it's a people-based business. So, and about about a half a year ago now, we've moved back to Kingston and more specifically Bath, which is just outside of Amherstview, where John and I grew up, and still selling houses and having a blast.
Wow, that is so impressive. And actually, I'll be honest, I came into this interview, John very briefly gave me sort of a backstory, but I didn't realize that it actually stretched. I mean, Canadian Idol, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like, we're going to
Sure.
have tons to talk about. But Costa Rica, opening a restaurant, moving back, changing and shifting. So you've gone from like you know, entertainment in in the restaurant industry, that hospitality,
Yep.
then going back into real estate, coming back, becoming a top agent, and then moving again, right? So
Yeah.
like my mind, and you mentioned about like feeling that there would like it was a success in Costa Rica. So like I'm getting this sense of, you know, you clearly don't have the same primal question as I, which is this, I need to feel secure. I need to feel
Right.
like financially,
Yeah.
like I need to know where the next paycheck is coming from. Like that's something that I struggle with. I'm sensing that you don't struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I guess my wonder is like, what would you say, and maybe you know this top of mind, or maybe you haven't thought about this, but what do you think like maybe inspires you to be able to make that shift? Is it that you like new things, you enjoy challenge, you haven't found maybe the thing? Like some
Yeah.
people believe like you were born to do one thing. I don't believe in that personally.
Right.
Like what's going on in your mind when you've sort of like made these shifts from entertainment, hospitality, real estate, and now it seems like, you know, you've sort of found a
Yeah.
spot there, but who knows, maybe there's something else around the corner for you.
You know what, for me, what it was being in the music industry is so unstable, that you kind of just learn to live with it. I can remember living on my buddy's couch for a few years and touring all over the
Right.
world, and people are like, "Oh, you guys must be so successful." I'm like, "Man, you have no idea how expensive it is to tour, how expensive it is to record an album, to shoot music videos." So I'm used to that, and that's definitely served me well. Leaving Godridge was a big unknown because, you go from, selling a lot of houses, especially obviously in the pandemic, high six figures was pretty common out that way. And now saying, am I going to risk all that? I've got a client base, we own out there. Do we really want to move back to Kingston? And for me, it was, yeah, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
I'm we're pretty My wife is very flexible as well when it comes to stuff like this, and I think that's part of the reason why we make such a good team, is that we have this ability to, you know let's move to Europe for a year, see what happens. We could do that,
Love it. Yeah.
and we thrive on that stuff. So
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. I think I remember when thinking what you just said about, people envision that this rock star lifestyle is
sure.
rich and you got everything. And I remember thinking that about you. I think I
Yeah,
came to
yeah.
one of your concerts and we were like in the back van,
Right.
hanging
Yeah,
out. And it
yeah.
was like, man, this
Yeah.
is a real rock star, like this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Hmm.
he's living the life. Which makes me think about like what the life is, like we always talk here on this podcast about our personal beliefs. We feel like thinking about what our goals are, like what do we really want. So for example, like when we help and think about for real estate investors or just investors in general, like figuring out what we really want, like what does it look like, when we retire, or like what do I
Yeah.
want my lifestyle to be like now and into the future. We call that kind of like our personal beliefs. Like, I think Kyle, you would remember, like, I think Matt, always talked about his personal beliefs. Like, what is it? Like,
Hmm.
am I going to sit on a beach in Belize and like
Mhm.
sip on Mai Tais, or am
Yeah, I
I going
think
to
it
be
was a
doing
Don
some?
Campbell thing, you know, big,
Yeah,
big real estate investor here in Canada and
Yep.
Ontario
right.
in particular. But yeah, like but when you like the one thing Matt and I, to give you some context there, Ryan, Matt and I started investing in real estate and we sort of did it to build wealth,
Yep.
to, prepare for the future, like all the things that you're supposed to do. But we really struggled with actually articulating like why, like
Right.
other than for me, my primal question being that, am I secure? Like, am I, can I put food on the table? Can I, take care of my family? Like those things, I was sort of like, I, I don't really know. And it's taken many years to kind of think about that. So I think that's what John's getting at here is like,
Mm-hmm.
do you have that vision, or is that vision what you're doing, which is just living life? Like more and more I start to recognize, I'm like, I think I like just seeing what's out there and
Yeah.
learning and, failing along the way, of course. But it's like you've got kind of two paths. A common path is you pick a career. It's like, hey, you picked that one. It's enough to get by. And it's like you sort of just stick with it. And you're like, now here I am, like educators, John and I being teachers. That's kind of the mindset, right? It's like, hey,
Right.
I enjoy it. I'm fine. I'm not having any issue with it, but it's sort of like not even considering all of the like just infinite possibilities that are out there. So
Right.
when you hear that, like what does that mean to you? And are you working on it, or do you know it? Like what does that look like and sound like for Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, as I get older, it certainly evolves. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to do that, dream life, whether it was living in Costa Rica. It wasn't a beach, it was the jungle, but we loved it. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been very fortunate in that way throughout my life that I've been able to live a lot of people's dreams. Number one, while still being relatively young. I do think about that a lot too. Do I want to wait till I'm 65 to do the 6 months in a Caribbean country, or do I want to do it when I'm in my 30s?
Mm-hmm.
And we ended
Mm-hmm.
up doing it in our 30s, and I have no regrets. Now, did that cause some financial hardships? Yeah, absolutely. Because, well, people like such as yourselves were building a career. I was out there still working hard, but let's be honest.
Hmm.
The money you can make in Canada compared to, let's say, the money you're making in Costa Rica or Belize, definitely different. So
Mm.
now I'm definitely working towards, okay, I want to retire at 55. What's that look like? What do I have to do to get there? And my wife and I, she's 10 years younger than me, so it's a little different. Obviously, she's going to be probably still working once I hang it up. But for me, my ideal would be, to have, a comfortable amount of liquid assets, whether that's multiple properties, you know, generating income, like not necessarily until I'm 90, but maybe it gets me through that 55 to 75,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just kind of unload things. And for me, I think realistically, I would probably love to spend 6 months of the year traveling. We love to travel. And because we both have been broke, we know how to travel pretty frugally, although I don't like doing that. As I get older, I'm like, nah,
Right.
Yeah.
I get it
That
now.
is less fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, no, this. I can remember we were crossing we were doing a border run in Nicaragua, and we stayed at a hotel. It was $10, which was honestly one of the best hotels we could find. And the shower was literally just, a garbage can full of water. And I
Yeah.
think,
I've been there and done that.
yeah, and that's a learning experience, and I do think you grow from that. If you can do that, I think it makes you a stronger person, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
I'm super happy we did that. But now I'm at a point now where I'm like, let's rent this villa in Spain for a month,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is still
Yeah.
actually
Water
really
coming from
affordable.
taps, is
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah. You
like a
yeah,
graduated.
luxury,
You
right?
graduated
yeah,
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. And I think I, if you had asked me even 5 years ago what my personal beliefs was probably thinking about, hey, I just want to retire at 55 on my teacher's pension, and
yep,
I'm going to move down to Florida and put on some white shoes and white pants, right? Like I think, and like I'm gonna read all
love it,
day. I'm gonna
love
read
it.
all day. Like that, I
Yeah,
think that's all I remember imagining. But I think coming at it from my pathway, your pathway, completely different. But I think we still now have like the same view of like what our beliefs is going to be is to
yep,
have that kind of passive income, to be able to be flexible and be able to travel, but also, hey, if I wanna work, and work is maybe different than the way I think. Like I think it's like Kyle's. It's like if I could just keep learning and keep applying and keep
Hmm.
failing and then relearning and then seeing if
yep,
that works. And it's like that part has now been my shift. And
right,
so it's like that risk taker is now come in me, but I never had it before. And I think
right,
I think we're similar in a lot of ways that way. It's kind of like we started on the same journey. We kind of our paths diverged, and now we're like
absolutely,
aiming at the same spot again. And
yep,
and that brings kind of me to think about your real estate investing experience. I'm always curious about the beginning investor, like the
yeah,
first time, the first moment. Like what
Hmm.
what did that look like? What did that sound like? What was some of the worries? So I know that you were you were living in Goderich. You were in Bayfield for a little bit,
yeah,
which is up on Lake Huron, kind of still southern Ontario, but a little bit more north than where Kyle and I are.
yeah,
It's kind of cottage country up there. You also, so what I heard you say earlier was that you moved from Goderich, you came back to Kingston. I assumed before this conversation you had sold your Goderich home
right,
and moved back home into Kingston area. But you had said just before we hit recording that you're renting that out. So I'm
right,
curious about, like, you obviously already had the home, you were living in it, But
Right.
then to make that transition to, hey, I'm going to be a landlord. I'm going to be like
A
a,
long distance landlord at that.
Yes.
exactly. So give
Yeah.
me some insight on like the
Sure.
thinking around that, because I think there's a lot of people that are like, I don't want to get into this because of, you know, I don't want to be the landlord. I don't want to have to fix this. I don't want to have to do that. What happens if they
Yeah.
wreck the place? These are all the
Yep.
worries. People don't get into real estate investing.
Yeah. So as a realtor, I can say I've definitely witnessed those nightmare scenarios, whether it's doing a walkthrough through a rental property for a seller. We've been very fortunate that when we listed our place for rent, we were in that higher price range. We just had to be. We had just put 100 grand into renovations. We just did a kitchen. We just did all the
Mm-hmm,
flooring, and we're like, and now we're gonna rent this? Are you insane? We just put a luxury kitchen into it. Who does that?
right.
Yeah.
But luckily for us, we found
Hey,
a
who's your realtor that recommended that
yeah,
idea?
exactly. It was really a dumb idea. But we had planned on staying. We hadn't really decided that we were leaving yet. And it needed a kitchen anyway. And I'm a big believer that equity, 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 man. Everything you put into that house,
Mhm.
if you do it properly and you have somewhat good taste, you're gonna get that back and then some. So when we decided to move, we had just kind of put the feelers out for looking for one of our friends who might know someone. Long story short, a friend of mine who's actually a home inspector, uh, was looking for a property to rent, and it just worked out perfectly. Now, it's an old arts and crafts home,
Mm-hmm.
100-year old. It's not a good rental property generally, but sometimes you need to take those risks rather
Mhm.
than, do I really want to sell after the pandemic bubble? No, God, no. That would have been a disaster. We bought before the pandemic. And so we were very fortunate and lucky that
Mm-hmm.
we've already seen our equity. We've seen our price has already doubled, which is crazy. That's
Mhm.
not normal. That's not, I'm not saying that you buy a house 3 years later, it's going to be worth it twice as much, but we were very fortunate. And we're also fortunate that we don't need to sell. We can keep the house as an investment
Yeah.
and just watch it grow.
I love it. I love it. And I was going to mention that as well. Like I'm getting the sense here. I don't know your personal finances, but
Sure.
knowing how, you had success when you're selling in Godrich, I'm going to assume that you're having success in Kingston as well, or building
Yeah.
that success.
Yeah.
And, when you think about investing, sometimes people get too stuck in trying to maximize every single opportunity, right? Like
Right.
I used to be that guy. Like I used to try to find the perfect opportunity. And sometimes really all it is making sure that you're positioning yourself in a situation where you're going to be okay, and the investment is going to at least hold its value. In real estate, we tend to see, obviously, that over the long term, that equity is going to grow. So it's like, if you didn't need that extra cash
Yeah.
flow, if you didn't need that extra, equity out to put into the next property, why not just, sit
Right.
on it, right? Like it's
Absolutely.
not going anywhere. It's going to at least be a hedge against inflation. And it sounds like it actually worked out quite well for
Yeah.
you, given the situation. But even if it didn't, even if we had a temporary dip, some people bought at the peak of the market and have experienced a little bit of a dip. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? We're 12 months from that peak, and maybe 18 months later we'll start to see things get back to normal. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got that equity, you've got a cash flowing asset, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
Or even if it is slightly cash flow negative, you can kind of picture it like you're just socking money into an RSP, right? Like at the
Absolutely.
day, someone's paying the bulk of the expenses, and you're gaining, that appreciation, any cash flow, and that principal pay down, which is
Yeah.
like the win-win-win. So
Yeah.
you said equity, equity, equity. I love it. That's going to definitely go in our description here for this episode. My wonder is, are you owning a place, like a primary residence now in Kingston? And then
Yeah.
my wonder is, are there any other investments out there? Is it real estate? Is it something else? Are you, striving for more investment properties? Like where's your head
Yeah.
at?
Yeah. So we only probably only about 3 or 4 years ago we started with stocks. And obviously we've taken a bit of a beating over the last year and a bit. Um, Currently we've got a sweet little pad that we're renting while we look for a home. So it's worked out well in the fact that because I'm a realtor, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of know where the trend is going. And I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts, speaking about timing. You can't get too hung up on timing, especially if it's a long-term investment, obviously. But this is a good time for buyers. It's a good time for investors because of the high interest rates. As soon as those rates start dropping, prices are going to go higher,
Mm-hmm.
demand is going to get higher, and
Mm-hmm.
the inventory is always going to be low in Canada. We have a lot of new Canadians coming in over the next few years. I think something like 500,000 people. So there's going to be a large demand for real estate that we just don't have. So that's going to cause everything to go up. So real estate right now is a great investment, in my opinion. So we are looking for another property to the point where maybe we take the money from, the market and put it into real estate. We're not 100% sure yet. But it's certainly an advantageous time if you're an investor looking for real estate. Now, obviously, yeah, 3, 4 years ago, sure, before a bit of the boom, absolutely your returns will be higher relatively quicker. But if it's a long-term play, don't get
Mm-hmm.
too caught up on the timing. I see it all the
Mm.
time. Buyers are like, well, I want to wait till I'm like, if you find the right house, buy it.
Yeah,
Right.
especially if it's
What's
like in your
yeah.
mind, your
If you're a
personal
first time
residence.
buyer, absolutely.
You want to be in there
Yeah.
and you want to just like get moving, right?
Yeah.
That's
Like if you're not planning to sell it in the next
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
then what
right.
the heck are you waiting for, right? Like
Well,
5,000, 10,000
Exactly. It
here or
doesn't
there is
matter.
nothing,
It
right?
doesn't matter. Exactly.
yeah, we're huge, analytical nerds, being math teachers,
Hmm.
continually, analyze the numbers sometimes too much. And I think that was a little bit, we've talked about that here on the podcast too, a little bit too, not to a fault, but it's like it held us back a lot of times
Sure.
because we were always looking for the best deal. And
Right.
then now it's like, let's make sure we have a deal that we can live with as long as we're always thinking long term. And it might not be
Yeah.
cash flowing right now. It might be, hey, we're cash flow negative for a little bit, but then we can shift, our thinking around that by saying, hey, it's like we're socking it away in the RRSP for now, and
Absolutely.
it's gonna appreciate, hopefully over time. So that's kind of like our strategy as well. I'm curious about your other, your other investing when you kind of mentioned stocks. Like we've been doing a lot of learning and have done a lot of learning around stock investing, and our I think primarily our listeners are doing both, right? They're
Yep.
in the stock market, they're also in the real estate market, and they're wanting to do one or the other or
Right.
both, and are kind of learning along the way, which you know, give us some insight in there. Like what are you investing in particular stocks? Are you
Yep.
going full index funds? Are you, give us a snapshot of like what Ryan's,
Sure.
portfolio kind of looks like.
Yeah. So it's a wide variety, from everything from crypto to index. I'm a little more aggressive with my selections. So I'm a little higher on the risk category than my wife. We kind of wanted one to have, a
Right.
little bit of risk. And so, it's hers has done okay. Like I said, the last 18 months, we've gotten it back. We've clawed our way back out of the hole, luckily, but it's all relatively new to me as an investor. So we've got a guy in Goddard who takes care of us. We send him the money. He really does a lot of the selections.
Got
But
it.
for me, a lot of them, yeah, some of these are, whether it's crypto or even Brookfield, which is actually a parent company, I think, of my last brokerage, Royal LePage.
Mhm.
So there's some funds there that long term, whether it's 10, 15 years down the road, we'll see what happens. But again, we may end up, pulling some money out and
Mm-hmm.
buying another property to either rent out or live in, because it just makes financial sense if you can afford to do that, to put your money, like you said, you're stocking it away in an RSP essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, your return on real estate, historically has been very solid and very steady. So That's kind of where my mindset's at.
I love it. I love it. So it sounds like, you know, you've been kind of all over the block there with crypto. We did a ton of learning in crypto. We also,
Yeah.
you know, took a couple punches from crypto along the
Yeah.
way. But, you know, we look at it. One thing that I think is really important for people to, you know, those who are listening, those who might be maybe apprehensive about investing, even in the stock market, right? And, you know, I've
Yeah.
talked about this on previous episodes. There was a very long time where it was like, it just freaked me out, the idea, because I didn't
Mhm.
know anything about how it all worked. And that
Right.
was when I began my journey to go, okay, I
Right.
started with real estate because I understood it. I was like, it's a physical asset. I'm going, you know, I can go and knock on the door at any point.
Yeah.
It's there. Even if somebody doesn't think it's worth anything, it's like, I think it's worth something and
Right.
it's going to generate me money. Great.
Yeah.
Then we started going down the stock market, and actually learning about how it all works is so interesting. But it's also still, you know, you're going to take some punches along the way,
Yeah.
especially if you're, you know, you're trying to learn by doing. And I'm that type of person that I learn by doing. I'm sure you learned a ton as well, as, you
Yeah.
know, you went into that, and now you got kind of like, okay, like now I have to reset. I believe crypto is going to be a part of our future. I truly do. I believe,
Sure.
you know, that there's so much value there. It's not just about hopefully number goes up, but it's about understanding how that market works, understanding that risk profile. And it sounds like that's on your mind. So
Yeah.
as we wrap up here today, Ryan, I'm wondering, you know, you're chatting with all the invested students out there that are listening. Let's chat a little bit about what would you say? Do you have any advice, any thoughts about what you would recommend for someone who maybe is listening to the podcast? Maybe they have, you know, I'm going to argue most people probably start with, you know, mutual funds from their local bank,
Yep.
and they want more. They want to do something else. They want to grow their wealth,
Right.
so that they can achieve that personal beliefs, whether they understand what that is or not. They
Yeah.
want to get there at some point. What would you say? What are you hoping the message that they remember from this podcast episode here with you?
Sure. I would say one thing that we're seeing a lot more of as the market changes in terms of real estate are, you know, partners such as yourselves or families coming together to purchase investments. A lot of times that's going to be cottage country. So there's an example of an investment that not only will give you a return, but you can actually enjoy. Like you said, this is yours, you own it. And we're seeing a lot of people come together and say, okay, well, here's a $700,000 lakefront cottage. Not everyone can afford a second property that costs 700,000. Most people can't. So some ideas and some options is, well, maybe you get two or three families together and you split that ownership. So even if in 10 years it's worth, you know, 1 million, 1.1, that's still a really good return on a relatively low risk investment that you can actually enjoy while building equity, as opposed to just, you know, seeing the numbers on the screen and, you know, sleepless nights and worrying
Right.
and worrying.
Yeah.
This is a good example of something that, you know, yeah, there's some inherent risk anytime with the waterfront, especially, but I think that's a great idea. And especially if even if you don't own your principal residence, a lot of people don't. A lot of people are renting, paying higher than mortgage right now. So if you can't get into your own property, but you want to get into the market, I think that's a good way to do it.
Love it. Love it. And you know, like when you kind of mentioned like partnerships, you're very partnership oriented, and I think that's a
Yeah.
great aspect or asset you have in your line of work. That's something that we're doing as well. You know, like we're partnering with many different investors to kind of to get them into the real estate world,
Yeah.
you know, leveraging our success, leveraging our experience. And I see like a great partnership forming here between us. But I want to thank you. And I think Kyle's got one more thing to say, but I want to
Yeah.
thank you, Ryan, for taking some time out of your super busy day and joining us here today.
My pleasure. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, Ryan, I just want to like thank you for that, you know, creative thinking. And it just kind of reminded me, I don't know what book it was in. I want to say it was something, maybe Cash Flow Quadrant or something from Robert Kiyosaki. One of those books, they highlight this idea of trying to, when possible, take your wealth building journey and try to leverage it in a way that will also support what it is you're trying to achieve. So, you know, we talked
Right.
a lot about this personal beliefs idea. Like if a cottage is your personal beliefs, why wait? You were
Yeah.
talking about waiting
Mm.
till 65 to travel.
Yeah.
Why wait? So if you're able to do something that, let's say, buying a cottage might not be the best investment, but
Right.
it's not about the best investment. It's about what investment's going to help you achieve your goals. So if that's something you want to actually do, instead of waiting, socking away money, continuing to watch the market get away from you, right? The real, like,
Yep.
I'm cottage country, it's not going to get any cheaper in the long run,
No,
right? So,
No.
I mean, you
absolutely.
could wait 10 minutes or 10 minutes, 10 years, try to, save up, or, keep trying to do something so that you can eventually obtain this cottage.
Right.
If
Mm.
I'm thinking creatively now, just like you're suggesting, maybe that could happen like sooner than later, right? You
Yeah,
start
absolutely.
seeing like who else has a vision that aligns with ours. And it's like, if my goal is to invest in stuff now so I can
Mm.
get a cottage, what if you could get a cottage and maintain an investment? It might not be the best one, but it's like you've already
Absolutely.
got the end goal you were
I,
after,
Yeah.
and you benefit on the upside as well. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a cottage in our future.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, there's three of us. Matt's
There
not
you
on the
go.
show today,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
four of us. I
Yeah.
uh I,
I
I
like
think
it.
I think we're gonna be chatting with Ryan a little bit
Yeah.
more
yeah,
here.
Love
yeah.
it. Love it.
Awesome, awesome stuff. Thanks so much, Ryan, and I look forward to meeting up with you soon. Actually, we are up in your area in a week or so, hitting the camping
John,
spot. You know our camping spot.
I'm
You.
seeing you. Yeah. We've got a
Yeah.
camping spot just down the road from you guys.
Oh
So
yeah, you
yeah.
did. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
I'll
Yes, I'm
bring the
excited
beer.
now. I'm really excited. Yeah, let's
Are
do
you
it.
guys gonna crank this episode on on the loudspeaker for everyone
Absolutely.
in the campsite to hear?
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
gonna play it. It's gonna be nonstop on
Play it
repeat
loud and
the
proud
whole
for
time.
Repeat.
The
us.
whole time.
Repeat.
All right. All right. Thanks, Rye. I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right. Okay.
Hey,
Bye,
listen,
guys.
Ryan, before you go, where can people find you? Like,
Yeah.
you came on the show here. You're in
Right.
Kingston. Tell
Yep.
us a little bit more. Are you on social? You got a website? Where can
Yep.
people find you so that they can leverage? It sounds like someone who's got the creativity that I want when I'm working with any realtor. I always
Yep.
want
Mhm.
them to be looking out for my best interests. I want them to
Yep.
be thinking creatively, seeing angles, seeing perspectives when I'm not. And it sounds like, based on this very short conversation, you check the boxes for me. So if I'm in
Yeah.
Kingston, where am I going? How do I find you?
Yeah. So my partner Jen Fitzpatrick and we have a real estate group called Malcolm and Fitz, and we are on Instagram, Malcolm and Fitz, and I think our website is malcolmfitz.com. The beauty of us, though, is that we do a lot of things on social that maybe a lot of the other realtors don't quite do yet or are starting to do. So that kind of leans itself into our marketing as well. So
Yeah.
if you look us up on Instagram, you'll see some of our wacky and sometimes silly videos.
Awesome. We'll include those links and some others in the show notes page for folks to go and learn more about
Right
you.
on. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, guys.
As always, Kyle, I always, think about the episode after we've recorded it and think about some of the big takeaways that we have from an episode. And, I've known Ryan for my whole life, as we said in the episode, starting from, little kids together, kindergarten together, all the way up till now. Like, we've always kept in touch, and there's not too many friends, I think, that I have where I've kept in touch that long. And hearing his journey, I haven't even heard some of those stories before, and but hearing that journey, it just makes me think how powerful his transformative story from all his experiences has led him exactly to his moment now. And I really love the idea of thinking about working towards or making decisions on your investments so that you can achieve what you were looking for, like your personal beliefs. Like, we want that goal. Hey, what are we doing now to achieve it? I love that message that came out of this episode today.
Yeah, and it reminds me, we've had chats with so many invested students out there, friends and family and people who have been referred to us to have chats with us about real estate investing, stock options, my personal favorite, the infinite banking concept, using whole life insurance, all kinds of different strategies. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's so difficult to actually decide what a great strategy is for any one individual until that individual sort of decides, like, what is it that they're trying to achieve? Are they just trying to gain as much, wealth or assets as possible? Are they hoping to travel? Are they hoping to have that cottage, as Ryan mentioned in this particular podcast? Gaining that clarity around what you're trying to do it for can really help us help you in terms of pointing you in the right direction. I know one of the questions I ask people right away is like, are you gaining wealth or building wealth simply so that you leave a legacy behind? And if they say yes to that question, then I say, maybe starting with infinite banking might be a best bet for you as a starting point, not the end, but maybe as a start, because that's going to help you achieve that over the duration of your lifetime. If you're looking to, try to ensure that you gain wealth and generate that wealth so that you have options in retirement and you're not really sure what those options are, then we tend to start looking at real estate as an option. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it really does come down to what is it that you're after, right? Having money, money is helpful, but only helpful as a tool to help you accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish. If you don't have something you want to accomplish, it's not going to really do a whole lot for you. Of course, the number goes up, but your happiness, your lifestyle, the things that you wake up in the morning for may not shift a whole lot. So I think this is a great episode to get you thinking about what are you doing it for? Why do I want to build wealth? And, what is the actual journey that I need to truly begin now in order for me to get closer to that end goal?
Friends, if this is the first episode you've listened to, then we want to welcome you to the Invested Teacher podcast, and we'd love for you to hit subscribe. Hit subscribe so that you do not miss out on all the episodes. We put out one episode every single week. Have been doing that for over 6 months now, Kyle. We are at episode 34 here today, and we're going to keep it going. We're keeping it going for a while. So hit subscribe so that you can get all of our tips, suggestions, resources, interviews, like we did here with Ryan. And that's, we're always trying to bring you those sound ideas to build your wealth. So please hit that subscribe, and if you can, if this is the you've listened to a few already, please rate and review this episode.
Friends, all links, resources, transcripts from this episode can be found over on the website investedteacher.com. Episode 34. That's investedteacher.com/episode 34. Keeping in mind, we have all kinds of goodies, including our downloadable book list. That includes the book I referenced, the Cash Flow Quadrant, on that book list over at investedteacher.com/books.
Friends, also one last thing here is if you're looking to get yourself into real estate investing and looking for a trusted partner who's been through it, who's been through the ringer, who's seen many different aspects of real estate investing, and you'd like to kind of let them do the heavy lifting, that's us. We do the heavy lifting so that you can earn maybe cash flow or appreciation, add to your assets. Partner with us. Head on over to investedteacher.com/JV, investedteacher.com/JV, and fill out our form and see if you are our next partner.
All right, invested students, class dismissed.
Just as a reminder, the content you heard here today in this episode is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.